Transform your product ideas into a business reality. My name is Callie Keene, and this is End Hype. All right, today we're going to talk about a fun one. So here's the thing. When you're trying to start a new business, when you're trying to create a new product, everyone wants to look at the market and say, I want to do a little bit better. I want to be a little bit cheaper. I want to just have that slight edge so I can compete. But here's the thing. We're going to build an unfair advantage, and we're going to understand that competition is for losers. So Peter Thiel is the person that famously said that competition is for losers. And what he's really saying, and you can read 0 to 1, you can listen to his talks on YouTube. He speaks in hyperbole. I don't think he believes that it's hyperbole, that it's an over-exaggeration, but just take that in, take his personality into account, and understand that if you're thinking about being better than and comparing yourself to someone else, and this is the same in your personal life, in your business life, right? If you compare yourself to someone else instead of comparing yourself to what you can be, you're a loser. You've already lost in your mind because you've already positioned yourself as the underdog or the new kid, when you should be so aggressively better that you're saying these people better watch out, right? Because I'm going to disrupt the market. I'm going to change the game. And that's not hyperbole. That is how small businesses, little guys like Google, come in and displace Yahoo. It's not because they're slightly better. It's because they're unbelievably better. And they've built an unfair advantage that makes them undeniable. And we're going to break down the 3 categories that in our structure build companies that have unfair advantages. And we're going to pick a couple of those subcategories in there that make you stand out in those categories. So when we evaluate ideas and teams and business, and when people go out to go get funding or to win a grant or even to get, say, a manufacturing partner or get somebody to join their team, what really sells through beyond some appeal to history, like, hey, I've done this before, or hey, we went to this cool school, like I have an MBA from this company. It's to have a piece of information that sets you apart, that's so unfair that a large company can't come in and just replicate it, right? And that goes back to defensibility. We can roll all these things up and we can rate how defensible a business or an idea is. And we can put that together as an unfair advantage. And this goes in our slide when we go out to win pitch competitions. It goes in our slide when we go out to go speak with investors, or it goes in our, our grant when we write up a topic and put it in there. We use this over and over again. But as we develop a business, we'll also look to those things that we are really, really good at in a disruptively unfair way. And we'll say we need to focus on our strengths, right? We need to focus on these categories that make us unique, that make us powerful and more valuable. You can go in and shore up some holes or whatever. But when we look at these categories and we identify those strengths, we have to understand that's our position of power. And we're going to amplify those things first, because that's how our little small startup team of 2 people or 3 people can then grow to 200 or 300 people, right? Or grow from 0 revenue to millions in revenue. That's how it works. You can't operate because you do bookkeeping the same way as everyone else, or Facebook marketing just like everyone else does. There has to be some core unique aspect to what you're doing that is so good, that's so valuable, that it allows your small, scrappy team where you don't have as much funding as the big guys, you don't have as many people, you don't have as many hours, you don't have the resources and capital that can still make you not just compete, but dominate. So the first one of these categories that we look at is team. Always look at team. And even if your team is just you, just one person, knowing what your skills are, your motivation is, what your goals are, knowing the experience and that background, and being able to, in a transparent way, say, this is what I bring to this business, is very powerful. And that will allow you to build teams. We advocate for teams of 2 and 3 people to start. Generally, there should be a business person, there should be a technical person, and then there is some type of interface, outside-inside management interfacing person that can look different based on the different types of business. But you can think of that as an operations person. You can think about it as a UI UX person, depending on how you structure the business. But I like teams of 3 people. 2 people can become contentious. 3 people, it's a very dangerous number. You have a lot of hours that you can put. You have a lot of knowledge that you can put together if the knowledge is there. But teams are what gives you that first initial boost, that unfair advantage. So to be able to look and do a skills inventory and say, these are the things that we are best in class in. These are the pieces that we all bring to the table. That is absolutely important and often overlooked in favor of the value of an idea, which does bring us to a second point of unfair advantage, is our defensibility of that idea. But we don't just look at patents and trademarks, but we look at manufacturing secrets, trade secrets, right? We look at the trademarks. We look at all of those pieces. What are the pieces that are, if not impossible to take away, they're more difficult for someone to take it away? I don't agree that patents give you a monopoly on an idea. I think that more often than not, patents give you a monopoly on an idea that is not actionable. If you look at the statistics of how many patents actually get commercialized and they recoup the cost of the patent, it's extraordinarily low. If we wanted to grab your attention with some hyperbole, I would say that if I was running the same product as the U.S. Patent Office, I would be sent to jail for fraud, right? Because they're selling that you have protection on an idea. That is the concept of a patent, and it is demonstrably false, as a lot of people are designed out of their patents or they're unable to commercialize them for a number of reasons. But that being said, they do have their use, and one of the purposes of a patent is to protect a good idea or a usable idea, a commercialized idea, and to build a extended patent portfolio that is part of a defensibility strategy and does bring you some unfair advantage to the market. To say, hey, we own the license to this piece of research that's coming out of this research institution, so we're the only company in the world that can do this thing. So a good example of this would be where someone purchased the patents for SLS 3D printing, right? They said, hey, I'm going to be the only company that can commercialize this idea. And it took them a decade to get that truly commercialized into the market. But then for the remainder of that validity of that patent, they were the only person that could use that technology. So that's great. That's fantastic. They were able to go across that chasm, and they had an unfair advantage to the market because a whole process technology for manufacturing was monopolized by someone that owned that technology. So kind of cool. So that is another aspect of it. And so if you look at that initial piece, that team, knowing yourself, knowing what you need, and knowing what you're good at, that's going to inform a lot of decisions, especially going into what type of intellectual property that you're going to be creating, and then moving into this third category of relationships. I feel like the most important of all of these, the true unfair advantage in the market, is building these relationships. And you can see how one of these then forms the other. You have to have that great team that's going to create that idea, validate the idea, prototype it, get it protected, build it up. But that's leading us to this third column, this third category of relationships. So even if a patent can get removed, it can, even if the patent is not all you felt like it could be from a defensibility standpoint, even if your idea is not patented, business relationships and relationships in general can protect your business and give you a gross unfair advantage. I'll give you a very simple example, and then we'll talk about a defensibility example. So on a very simple example is using someone like K-Form or Red Blue Collective or another manufacturing partner that can give you the capabilities of a multi-million-dollar business and your team only having 2 or 3 people. So having partnerships, and you can form those with letters of intent, letters of support. You can form those with different types of contractual vehicles to say, hey, we're a small team, but I have this company that we're working with. We've partnered with this other vendor, right? And they're going to give us all of that horsepower to see our idea and our team to market. And that makes immediate sense for me as a manufacturer, but it also makes sense for large B2B partnerships. If your idea is so valuable, and this is something I talk about all the time, if your idea truly solves a problem and it's a good idea, right? Your idea is so good, there is a customer out there who's willing to fund that idea into existence, right? They're willing to cough up all of the money, the development money, the everything, not as an investment, but just because it solved their problem that much. And this is much more common than people think that it is, but grabbing large corporate partnerships and say, hey, well, we've partnered with HP, and then bringing that to the investors that you're trying to build a relationship with and say, hey, look, I have this partnership with these large corporations. I have these partnerships with these manufacturers. I have this partnership with this university. And then bringing it to someone, it becomes a much more appealing package, right? You have the team to execute it. You have the idea that is worth pursuing. And then you have the partnerships that can actually realize that at scale. And that can give a team of any size an unbelievably powerful, unfair advantage next to a competitor who's organically built their business. Say like, oh, I sold some, then I sold a little bit more, then I got some inventory, and then I started doing some marketing, and I grew and I grew and I grew. That's fine too. But there's a lot of ideas out there that require massive action, massive growth to see them exist at all. You can't have one exist without 1,000 or 10,000 existing, right? And people fall victim to this chasm where they have an idea and they say, well, I don't know how to get this, get this going, get this to market, get this thing out there. But building an unfair advantage, especially around those relationships, allows us to cross the chasm by using the resources of those relationships. And that takes those competitors that losers look at and say, if I could just start a business and I could do this, these people are doing $3 million in revenue. That's fantastic. But if you are able to build that unfair advantage, you can leapfrog them from 0 to 8 figures quickly by using the resources of those relationships. And I'll give a defensibility example of relationships. And this is why I really, now I'm not a lawyer, so you should go speak to a lawyer. And I do hold patents, and I've helped work on people's patents. So I'm not saying don't get patents at all. I'm saying, buyer beware, understand what you're buying and what it does before you go out and think that this is the cure-all, the panacea to your problems. But let me give you an example of why relationships can trump patents. So a friend of a friend has a product that is in every pharmacy type company. So think CVS, Walgreens. And that product has been ripped off many times. And the company that rips it off, they get his patent nullified. First, they make the product, start selling it, and they sell it on TV. They sell it on, direct to consumer. As soon as they're forced to stop, they get the patent nullified, and they go back to selling it. And they go through this process over and over, and they do it with a lot of products. It's kind of how their business operates. But if you have that sales channel and say, I have this business relationship with CVS and they can only sell this version of this product, they can only sell my product because that's what they're buying. That's what takes up that store shelf. That's what they're selling. That pirate competitor can't get into that store. You've blocked them with your relationship. Even though they were able to litigate and cause problems and do this and that, you can protect them with that business relationship. It might even be a personal relationship with the buyer. It might be the way that your contract is structured. But you can have it protected at that level and continue to do business, continue to bring in revenue, even though you've been cut off or you've been outpositioned or you've been defrauded in some other way. And this goes across every type of relationship that you have. And I've seen it work the opposite way, where somebody has a knockoff product and they sold through Amazon. The knockoffs they sold on Amazon. They're a fourth of the price. Guy never sold another one of his products. Like, why would you buy the identical product for $30 when you can buy it for $7, with Prime? And Amazon's not going to do anything about it because they're like kind of looking at it and thinking, man, maybe I should have been the person to knock this off in the first place, right? There's no relationship there. It's just Amazon FBA. It's just another random thing out of millions of things that are sitting in a warehouse. There's no real contract that's involved. And it doesn't matter, right? At that point, you're talking about on-page SEO, you're talking about ads, you're talking about trying to capture emails from Amazon, get referrals. Like, you're trying to do continual work. You're trying to do treadmill work to sell that product and to stay relevant, not even competitive, to maintain that business. Because you have no unfair advantage. You're just out there floating around facelessly. Like, people don't know who your team is. They don't really have a network. Your idea is replicable, and it's apparently not that defensible. In your business relationships, you're dealing with somebody who just doesn't really care. Like, I'm sure that they care in some abstract, holistic, global way, but like on a case-by-case basis, they don't really care. I look at ideas like that and I think, I don't know. It's not something I want to get into. It's not something I want to build a business around. I want to build a business on a solid foundation. I want to build it on rock. right? And when I look at those pieces, the team, the idea, and the relationships, I want to see each of those pieces have a strategy, that we're building the business around shoring up each of those things. How do we pick the right people to be on our team? How do we build a culture where we're hiring, training for each of those team members to be better and better, right? How do we put people on our team under the right kind of pressure so they want to get better versus just sliding into oblivion? How do we understand what kind of ideas that we have an unfair advantage in that category, and how do we create more ideas? You know, how do we identify lateral problems? How do we create the next, the next order solution, the 2.0, the 3.0 of that idea? How do we continually improve the product offering, and how do we build that intellectual property portfolio around that idea cluster, around that problem that we're solving? So it's not just that one thing that can get knocked out, but it's a host of things working in an interconnected way, and that has much more value to us as a business and potentially to an investor or a buyer. That goes into another conversation that I'd love to have. Start with the end in mind. All businesses have to be sold, right, eventually, and you should be planning your exit strategy on day one. So that piece really helps. The team piece really helps. The relationship piece really helps. Unfair advantage helps with that transition. But I hope this was important. Unfair advantage is one of those sleeper slides on a investor presentation, on a pitch deck that people, they just kind of schluck off, right? They look at it and they say, "Yeah, my unfair advantage is," like I said, I went to Harvard and I got an MBA. I'm like, yeah, so did like 10,000 other people. That's not an unfair advantage. That's like a feature, right? So if they say, "Hey, I have 10 years of experience in this industry," that sounds great. But if they say like, "Hey, I have 10 years of experience and I've already created innovation in this space that looks like this," I'm like, wow, this person has this track record of innovation or building teams or whatever the thing that they're bringing to the table. They have done it. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And, people and the relationship in between those people will always be a key part of that unfair advantage. But generally in the slide, people write something like, "I have this idea and nobody has an idea as good as me. This is unfair. It's unfair advantage because it's better." I'm like, I don't know. I see a lot of terrible ideas that work out really well, and they become unfair or disruptive to the market because of these other aspects. So like, think about how your business supposedly competes, and our way that we do our competitive analysis, the way we walk through in Red Blue Collective, the competitive analysis is it's a little different, right? It's a little different, and I usually put competition as its own slide, separate from unfair advantage. I want people to understand that doing nothing is always an option, right? Nothing is always a big competitor. Competitors aren't always one-to-one matches. Competition isn't necessarily bad, right? I just think that measuring yourself up to the competition, it puts you in kind of a loser state of mind. So I have to agree with that, because you're not focused on potential, you're focused on overcoming a local point of optimization. You might be able to be a 10 out of 10, but you're focused on beating a 6 out of 10. So like, I'm going to focus on being a 6.1. It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant what other people are doing. It's helpful that they are doing it because you know that there's a market, but it's irrelevant that you're better than them. You should be dominant. You should be unfair in how much better you are than them. And the way that we build that is through our unfair advantage. We're going to use that as leverage to then build better products, go through the process. But this slide, people definitely just kind of coast through and say, my unfair advantage is just a piece of these, but they work in a system, right? Team, idea, and relationships work in a system together and make a holistic picture of who's doing it, what they're doing, and how they're going to get it done together, right? Ideas by themselves just sit there and do nothing. People by themselves just sit there and do nothing. The relationships, they're just potential energy. You've got to put all of these as A plus B plus C equals your unfair advantage. So when we walk people through this slide in coaching, we put that together through Skills Finder, through our competitive analysis search, and through a relationship matchmaking to equal something that's really, really powerful. But if you're thinking about pitching, there's a lot of virtual pitches out there right now. It's an amazing opportunity. You used to have to travel all over, fly all over. Now you can just sign up. If you have an idea and you're not pitching it to these competitions and you're wondering, like, how do I get capital to pursue this idea, and you're not at least using these pitch competitions or challenge programs as practice, you're missing out on literally the opportunity of a generation. Because as soon as we come out of any type of rest at home or whatever you want to call it, they're going to be back to in person. And that one that's in New Jersey or New York or in LA, you won't be able to attend it, right? Because you'd have to jump on an airplane and pay a ticket to go possibly win, when right now it's one Zoom call away. So if you are trying to build a killer pitch deck, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about this one slide, the unfair advantage slide, how to build it, how to write it, how to communicate it. This is what we talk about in the coaching program. And if you're interested in more information, you can go to redbluecollective.com, sign up for the newsletter, send out probably one email a month highlighting either stuff from the End Hype Show, things that we've posted on Instagram or on YouTube that are just pieces of that puzzle to put together. And if you have more questions, DM me, email me. We'll build a podcast around it about one of these topics on how to answer that question. Getting really, really deep into this. I have somebody pitching today, so I'm really excited after I hop off this podcast to see how she did. Maybe we'll do an interview coming up, but I think that people they're really missing out, right? They're busy on Netflix. They're like, hey, I could just watch this new Transformers movie and I'll work on my pitch deck some other time because I'm really just focused on this idea. I'd like you to go out there, and this is your call to action for today. Go get a pitch template. Go online, look at some pitch templates, just start filling it out. Go watch some of our old YouTube videos, right, on the different topics that you see on that template, and start filling it out and sign up for one of these pitch competitions, right? Nothing bad can possibly happen, and you'll get some practice. You get practice communicating, you get practice building the deck, and you might win. You might win $100, $500, $5,000. You might get really excited, but now is an opportunity that I don't think we'll ever experience again. So go out there, just take some action, right? Do me a favor. I will put out all the content in the world, answering any question that you have. I've picked up this information from being a mentor, running incubators, running pitch competitions, working on these nationwide innovation challenges and seeing the winners and seeing what their pitch decks look like, what their videos look like, what their actual products and their innovation, what their unfair advantage looks like. And I've realized that it's not really that complicated, but the people that win, they do follow a little bit better of a structure. They do get more practice, and it all hinges on somebody just being willing to be wrong, right? It's hard to have an unfair advantage in life when you have zero experience. And this is the thing, right? You know, that team structure, all those pieces, nobody's going to listen to you if you've never done anything at all. And if you're sitting at home and you know, you have a million ideas, focus on one. Just pick one thing and be like, I'm going to see this through just to this next step. Don't spend a bunch of time. You know, if you're amazing at programming or web design or electrical engineering or mechanical engineering, don't spend a ton of time just doing the thing that you feel comfortable with because that's your normal job and you're stuck at home. Why are you taking the thing that was your job and then turning that potentially into your life? You want to turn it into a business. Just spend some time developing the business concept and sign up for one of these pitch competitions. Just see, you're going to get amazing feedback, and that's the worst thing that's going to happen, right? Just pick an idea and take it a little bit farther down the road of what that business concept would look like. And you'll see those different pieces, and you'll see where the unfair advantage fits in, and you'll understand what I'm talking about. It's really hard to be the best when you've never done anything at all. And that's End Hype. And this has been the End Hype Show. I'm Callie Keen, and I'm out.